Hello and welcome to another episode of The Board. Today, I'm Gavin Coughlin, Agile Coach at Boost. I'll run through what we're talking about a little bit later. We've got Ruka on production today for the first time alone, so we hope you can hear and see us. And I'm joined by...
I'm Kirsten Donaldson. What do you sound brilliant? Okay, welcome to The Board.
And I'm Paul Llewellyn, also an Agile Coach here at Boost.
Today, what episode is it today? It's episode
29.
29, okay.
Exciting.
And today we're going to be covering a few topics. We might not get through them all. We may get through them all. We'll see what we get into the half hour. We're going to be talking about multitasking and the evils of multitasking and why it's not a great idea to have people spread across a few projects. And we're going to be talking about wiki speeds.
Their recent Kickstarter project. We're going to have a little chat about what they're doing there.
Yep. I'm also going to talk about project retrospectives because we were asked to do one recently as opposed to a sprint retrospective, and some ideas we had around that. Yeah. Also, a question we get asked very, very frequently, the business analyst role in Scrum. We're going to talk about that. And if we have time, we'll also talk about value stream mapping, and you read an interview with Alana Shalloway.
I'd particularly like to chat about that.
You particularly? Okay, well, we'll definitely get that in then. We'll make sure we prioritise that.
Yeah, I mean, ideally I'd like to talk about the Dave Snowden one as well, but we probably won't get time for that.
No, probably not.
Maybe next time.
Yeah. Well, do you want to start talking about the Al Shalloway interview?
Sure. So I did, admittedly, I speed read it this morning, and it was a video interview that Kane Ma did with Al Shalloway. Kane's been doing a series of video interviews to keep up with the community. So basically it was quite a frank interview about Al Shalloway's departure from the Scrum Alliance.
Okay.
So he talks about the reasons why he left that group of people, and one of the reasons was that he became quite interested in employing the principles of lean within Scrum.
Yeah.
But every time he started talking about it, he was kind of shut down by that group of people.
Yeah.
He's sort of intimating that they're Scrum purists and they don't really want to sort of muddy the waters for something else.
That's right. And well, that's the interesting thing, because Al's been a big. He's my understanding is that Net Objectives, his company, is originally an XP shop. So they
and certainly talks about XP quite a bit.
Yeah, and they've been extreme. They're extreme programming for from almost the beginning of the movement, and the Scrum works really well with XP, so it's interesting that the Scrum Alliance don't want their waters muddied with lean, or basically Kanban, which is what Al's talking about.
And that's what he talks about throughout the interview as well, how he sees those things all working together.
Yeah, because Kanban's the Toyota production system. It's the prototypical lean kind of the start of the lean movement, as I understand it.
Yeah. The other thing that Al was talking about, which is I found myself agreeing with wholeheartedly, was that the Scrum Alliance has had a large focus on training Scrum Masters. So the CSM course and the CST course. And Al's point that I actually agreed with was that why spend time and money training one person for 2 days or 3 days when you can train a team across 2 and 3 days? It's just a better use of time and money. I mean, the team are the people that need to really engage with this process and need to know what they're doing. I mean, while the Scrum Master role is obviously important, why not just put them into the team training day as well, so everybody gets on the same page at the same time?
I think that's the thing about the Certified Scrum Master course, isn't it? That it's slightly misnamed, perhaps, because teams can go on it because it gives.
And certainly all of our teams have been on it.
All of our team, exactly. All of our developers or development team have been on the course, and it just makes sense because it's not actually a Scrum Master course. So
that's true, but I think because it's a certified Scrum Master course, you end up having these sort of individuals sent on it. Rather than the team. So while it might be appropriate for team training, it's not billed as such, so people don't tend to go on it unless they want that qualification so that they can put it on their CV and get a job as a Scrum Master.
That's one thing that I find quite a lot. I meet people out and friends, and they say they've done the Certified Scrum Master course because they want to put on their CV and become a Scrum Master, but their only experience with it is that 2-day course, which is, in my mind, doesn't really qualify you to be a Scrum Master at that point.
I think it does depend on the trainer that you get.
Yes.
Like Kane, for example, was particularly good at kind of communicating.
Kane was great. Yeah.
What a Scrum Master would actually be doing, and the role, and how important the role was, and so on.
But certainly we've seen other trainers that where the experience wasn't as full.
Because Kane doesn't.
I've been on one terrible one.
Kane often doesn't stick to his slides, as we don't. We often go off slides and off topic, and change our training to suit the audience.
And what's happening with the audience at that time.
Yeah. And so that's interesting. I also wonder if the Scrum Alliance have a problem with Al's adoption of the Scaled Agile framework.
Undoubtedly. I mean, there's been many posts recently about Scaled Agile, and I've not seen many positive posts about it.
No, well, that's
but it's interesting because it really provokes thought. I mean, not to mention Dave's post too much, but the post read by Dave Snowden this morning was incredibly passionate, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which made it seem very dogmatic and single-minded in some ways. But it's all interesting, and it all adds sort of food for thought, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's one thing about Agile is that you need to be open to all discussions and let everybody talk. So, I mean, if a critique is constructive and well thought out, it's as worthwhile as anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was worthwhile. I mean, Dave's, I think, it was much more from a place of passion than a well-structured constructive critique.
It's quite vitriolic. Had the word garroting in there.
Yeah, I think to say that at best, Scaled Agile should be garroted is quite, stream of consciousness rather than a thought-out argument.
Yeah, I mean, I've obviously blogged about the Scaled Agile framework being a program consultant and so on. I'm not saying it fits every situation. It's not it's not another silver bullet. But it does address things of large organisations. It addresses what they should be doing at the program, but more importantly, the portfolio level of their organisation, and that's where the lean aspects. That's why Al is so passionate about lean, is because he's seen the effectiveness of using the lean approach as a way to feed into the Scrum teams or the Agile teams below. And so he's just encouraging people in an organisation to take the lean approach, which is to make your work visible, reduce your work in progress, reduce your unit of work.
It all makes sense, and it uses a lot of Agile principles and Scrum and lean all together. And the point for me is that for the people who are perhaps wholesale criticising Scaled Agile framework and not finding anything good about these posts, they haven't really allowed for the idea that it's a framework where you can adopt parts, well, most of it perhaps, and then evolve it as well. And what I got from Al's post is that he's really had an evolution through Scrum from back from working with Scrum Alliance, and he's sort of come out the other side and taken the best bits of Agile practice that he's seen along the way. Now I don't know whether Scaled Agile framework is the sort of pinnacle of that experience, but I don't think that he's saying that either.
No.
To me, he's still going through a journey and still evolving.
Yeah, and I mean, my thoughts about it are that Scrum and Agile just works wonderfully with small teams, and that's, in a perfect world, that's the best way to work.
At the moment.
In that way. Yeah, at the moment. But when you do start talking about large organisations, you've got to find a way to make that work within that large organisation. And it's like you said, Paul, there's no silver bullet. It's incredibly difficult.
No.
But Scaled Agile does address
some of those issues.
Things,
And to be fair, there's not much else, is there, at scale at the moment?
No, well, you've got, there are, Baz Vod and Greg Larman have done some great work. They've written 2 great books about practicalities of scaling Agile. And that a lot of their stuff is, is similar to what the Scaled Agile framework is teaching, i.e., they're using the principles of lean as the underpinnings for the work that they're doing for the whole organisation. You've got to build on something, and they're suggesting that you build it on the foundations of lean. So that means that the top levels of the organisation take a lean approach to feed into whatever the Agile teams are doing below, whether it's Scrum or Kanban or extreme programming. But you've got to feed in their work somehow. I've read a lot about the Spotify model. I think it is great for program level, but I still, because obviously Spotify are growing, and so that they may have changed things.
That's the thing, they're evolving as well.
They're evolving, and so I'm sure they're going to run into this, how to manage the feeding of work from, as they expand from 30 to 200 30 or whatever it is people, how do they manage the trickle of work, the trickle of work, you know, the portfolio?
How do they manage from the top level vision to the what gets spat out at the other end?
And I'm not sure they're a big enough.
How do they communicate it?
I'm not sure they're a big enough company to address those issues yet. You know, we're talking about organisations of like Boeing and Microsoft. Those kind of that's what those are the people who are adopting the Scaled Agile framework.
I mean, the proof really though will be in the outcomes. You know, and it's it's pretty new at the moment using Agile at this scale, right?
Yeah.
So all this talk about it, I feel a bit like let's wait and see if it actually has been a better way of working.
Well, there have been there are case studies out there where John Deere, for one example, there's lots of big companies out there that do use it.
There's heaps of case studies on the Scaled Agile frameworks website.
Yeah.
And people like Telstra, Australia Post.
Oh yeah, they use it.
Yeah, Australia Post as well.
Okay.
MYOB, which is the Mind Your Own Business Accounting.
Yeah.
Rally, obviously, big proponents of Scaled Agile. They use it themselves.
Yeah.
And then we've hopefully got this. Well, there's a couple of large insurance companies here that are using it, and some interest from other people in New Zealand. But obviously New Zealand's on a different scale from. So I can understand why adoption's slow. The interesting thing is, Gavin and I were doing some work with IC Agile recently, and they talked about Agile fluency in there, and that's a really important thing to understand. They're saying there's 4 stages of Agile fluency, and the first one is where the team focusing on the business value, and all you do is get the team to focus on the business value. And then the second stage is where the team is starting to bump into, where there's a friction between it and the wider organisation. So then you start to address some of the issues around where their touch points within
the communication with the rest of the organisation.
And then the third stage is where you start to reorganise the local structures to work with the team and feed into the Agile approach well. So you're talking about a reorganisation at the program level essentially. And then the fourth stage is where you'll transform the entire organisation. And their suggestion is the first one takes months.
Yeah.
The second one, they grow exponentially essentially until you get to the fourth stage.
So again, it's an evolution through.
It's an evolution.
Absolutely.
And it takes 5 years.
Not a big thing.
If you go with the bottom up approach, it takes 5 years approximately for a company to go to transform completely. And some companies never make it. They just never go across. They never truly become agile. And that's just, I guess. We've seen that Scrum can work with in organisations that aren't truly agile. But I think there is a great benefit, and this is what I'm trying to understand with these people that are shooting down the Scaled Agile framework. Is they're scared that the fluency of the organisation isn't significant enough, I think, or great enough to adopt a framework as truly encompassing as the Scaled Agile framework.
Perhaps. How long did it take us as an organisation to be? I mean, when I started a couple of years ago, I think about a year after we started, we stopped doing any projects with any other method other than Agile methods. So how long did it take for us to get from starting to look at Agile practices to that point? Do you know?
Good question, because it was before my time. I think Nathan,
about you, you've
our
been here a
CEO,
while.
was already.
I've been here for eternity, and let's see. Well, I think it took us a couple of years to really not just to be using the practices, but to be using the mindset and of the correct mindset, because we're still stuck in the past ways of how we used to work, and we still fight that sometimes. It's an ongoing thing. It's not something that you can rest on your laurels about. So it took us a couple of years, and we're fortunate because of the size of our company, and because the want to do it came from the top and the bottom, which is absolutely ideal. So obviously a little bit simpler to do it that way than if you're a massive organisation with hundreds of people. But it's still,
I think it's not just about the organisation though. It's for us being, suppliers, vendors. It's convincing clients as well.
Well, that's getting the clients on board.
That was kind of the big thing, shifting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, and it's still a difficult thing when you speak to clients and trying to get them to work with you in an agile way.
But absolutely worth it.
And yeah, that's right. It is absolutely worth it. And so we will trial a client through the approach sometimes to encourage them to work with us in this way. We'll say, okay, we'll do a sprint with you, see how it goes.
We've done that. Yeah.
And then if you're happy, then we'll continue.
And that's one difficulty that you face as a vendor, is that sort of education of clients, because you can't expect a client to come in and just understand how things work straight away. And it's hard to, even if you give them some training at the start, it's still hard, because the best way, as with most things, to get used to it and get used to the mindset and really understand how it works, is to be involved and get that experience. So sometimes trialing people on a sprint or two is a better way than just
it's good as long as you educate them up front. It's a bit unnerving sometimes, because it's not just the team that is part of the successfulness of that sprint. It's also the product owner and the organisation that we're engaging with. They have to be fully committed to it, if you like. Not fully committed, but willing to
commit enough time.
Enough time.
Yeah, I mean, and that's absolutely one of the ways that I try and sell our approach is we want to produce a successful project, and we need you to do that. We need you to be with us.
I'm gonna jump in there. And,
what are you going to do?
Because I think we should move on.
Yes. We talked about it enough.
But it's not changing it entirely, because there is a company that we've been involved with training, and they are relatively new to Scrum, I suppose. So they're having some of those struggles that we're talking about.
Yeah, totally.
And they have just finished a project, and it's quite a long project, and they asked us to do a project retrospective. And we've done a lot of sprint retrospectives and some project retrospectives internally as well, but never a full retrospective for a project that we weren't actually involved in ourselves. So I read Norman Kurth's book about project retrospectives. I think it came out in 2001. It's a really good book. And he had some very interesting ideas for a retrospective. I just want to go through some of them now.
Go for it.
First of all, he one question, because we were going to do our project retrospective in 4 hours. He recommends 3 days for a project retrospective for a large project.
Does it depend on how long the project is, though? Because this is all.
That was for a 6-month project.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's a long time to take away from your desk, isn't it?
Well, and that's actually the answer that very good question that people have. So. He kind of splits his project retrospective, and I don't think we'll use this, but I'm certainly going to take ideas from it. But he splits it into 3 parts. There's the readying section, just getting everybody ready for it, what's about to come, and then the past, we're addressing the past, and then the future, having a look at what you're going to do in the future. When you're in the readying phase, you do your introductions and make sure everybody gets a chance to talk, and maybe have a fun little exercise. And then you do an exercise called I'm Too Busy. And if you want to read more in depth about any of these, like I said, the book is by Norman Kurth. It's pretty cheap on Amazon at the moment on Kindle. But yeah, the I'm Too Busy exercise is getting people to put their hands up and say who thinks 3 days is a waste of time for this retrospective, and get a feeling for that. But then you get them to look back on the project that they've just been through and say, how many days do you think you've wasted through indecision or bad decisions and stuff like that?
None.
I say, is it like 0 days? Nobody puts their hand up. 3 days? Nobody puts their
I'll put up for 0.
You are a destructive
just ask me to leave during the break.
And then he said usually most people say 6 days or more.
That's right.
That they've wasted through indecision.
Yeah, during a project, which actually doesn't surprise me, and that this 3-day retrospective is going to save you at least 6 days in the next project. So
hopefully,
yeah,
I mean, that's a really good perspective to put on it at the start of that meeting.
Yes, and then you jump into an exercise called define success. We ask people to literally do that, just define what they think success means, and was this project a success, and get them to really talk about it. And they might surprise themselves, and if it's a project they don't feel too good about, they might surprise themselves by discovering that it's actually more successful than they thought, because they got it completed, they got it out there, even though there's a lot of issues along the way. And if they're still very negative about it, you just have to wear that answer and look at ways to improve the next project. And then you create safety in the room, so do some sort of a histogram or a vote where you get a feeling for how safe everyone feels in the room to talk openly in front of managers and everybody. And if they don't, do like a team charter with rules in it and stuff like that. So and then you can do another vote and see if people feel a bit safer. And then you're ready to go into talk about the past. And there's some interesting ideas in here. Some of them we've used before, and some of them I think would be quite unusual to try. But the first one is doing an artifacts contest. So people bring artifacts from their past project and they put them in the middle of the room and they talk about them. It might be a document. Somebody brought a pizza box that they had drawn out the infrastructure on. Right. Or a notepad, whatever it is, artifacts from the previous project, and everybody talks about them and leaves them in the middle of the room. Then you go and you do a timeline. This is probably the biggest, longest exercise, and we've done this a few times for retrospectives.
For yearly retrospectives.
Yes.
Like our biggest project's been running for 5 years, so we've never had a chance to do a project retrospective.
Yes, yeah.
We do yearly retrospectives.
That's right, yeah. And the timeline is just where you get everybody to, you can split them up into affinity groups, so people they feel they have an actual affinity with, and they take sections of the project. However you want to do it, just create a big visible timeline of the project with all the events. And that's quite a big exercise. He recommends splitting it into 2 parts if you've got a big team. And then doing an emotion seismograph, which we've also done, so you have another strip of paper under your timeline, and people will read the cards, and as they're doing it, draw a continuous line, and it will go up if they were feeling good around that time, and down, so you can get an idea of how people felt throughout the entire project.
Yeah.
And then you offer appreciations, just, talk to somebody, say like, Paul, I appreciate you for being devilishly handsome today. Yeah. And Kristen, I appreciate you for not saying anything in the last 30 seconds, which I think is a surprise.
I didn't know that was coming.
And then this one was interesting, passive analogy. So he actually gets you to watch a movie, provide popcorn and drinks, and gets everybody to watch a movie and get a movie that they can equate to their project. And he recommends Flight of the Phoenix. He's talking about the original Flight of the Phoenix.
Are we talking about the children's one with the...
No. It's a movie with Richard Attenborough and James Stewart, and they crash in a desert in a plane, and they have to try and get out, work as a team, and they basically build a plane and fly out. It's a great movie, actually. The remake was terrible. Make sure if you're to watch it, watch the original.
So you wouldn't put on like The Great Escape because they'll get captured in the end, right?
Yes. That's right. Well, there still might be some analogies to be made there.
Yeah, there's teamwork,
But tell people before the movie to watch it with their past project in mind, and then have a conversation afterwards about what did you feel about that movie related to what we did.
It's interesting because next week I think at Agile Valley they're going to be talking about the hero's journey, which is a similar kind of thing. All of these things, like there's a journey. A pattern basically in the work we do where we have to, you start off, you run into some hardships, you overcome the hardships, you win the beautiful princess, and you all go happily ever after. But it's called the hero's journey anyway. Sorry.
Nice.
Yeah, I didn't really get that metaphor when I read that description, but thanks for explaining it to me.
Yeah. And then after that you have a session with our managers. So you get the managers over here and the team over here, and you get the managers to construct a message that they'd like to give the team about the past project, and the same with the team, a message that they want to give the managers. And then you repair damage with play.
Does that mean there's going to be some fallout from that previous?
Possibly. But any damage that's been done to relationships throughout the project, if it was a bad project, you literally repair it through play. So it might be table tennis or whatever you want to play, and that's a break in the whole exercise.
I can see why this takes 3 days.
Yep. But then you're into the last phase, which is where you're talking about the future, and out of the timeline activity, you're also mining it for goals. So trying to come up with things that went well, what didn't go well, what we can do in the future. You're trying to do that all the way through this. Then you get the cross affinity teams exercise, so you mix the people up quite a bit, and they talk about what went well, what didn't go well, what bothered them, and what's still puzzling them, what haven't we discussed yet, is there still more to know. And then there's an exercise called Making the Magic Happen, where you just sit back and let people talk, and there's usually things that still haven't been discussed, and you frame it that way. It's like, we've been here for 3 days now, we're coming to the end. Is there something that you feel you would have liked to have talked about but haven't yet? And hopefully the magic will happen here, things will bubble up and people will start to talk.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's like other than taking people down the pub and getting them to say those unspoken things
Yes.
when they're drunk, you know.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
then
You could
maybe
provide.
forget
You could
much.
provide booze for this. Yeah.
But you
Do a
could,
few shots beforehand. Yeah. Play the Puff and Pirate game.
Yeah.
Chaos.
And then this change paper, and you just get people to ask about what artifacts or what documents bother them in their process and what they might be able to change there. So it's a very practical sort of an exercise. And finally, it's just the close of your project retrospective, and you get people to talk about what they feel they've learned. And one exercise he mentioned, which I quite like, is you get everyone to write down on index cards things that they hope will happen after this project retrospective, of how things might be different,
Right.
you know, their hopes for the future, and they all put them in the middle of the floor and shuffle them, and then different people pull different ones out and read them out. So nobody, it's like a private private
It's like
ballot.
anonymous, yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's what he defines as a good group of exercises for a project retrospective.
Yeah.
I
So
think
do you think there's a way of cutting that down to an afternoon?
well, I think there's certainly ideas. I don't think I'd be showing any movies in a half day.
No.
Show a short movie, maybe
Short
a short
film.
film.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
it did make me think. Well, maybe a half day isn't enough for a really valuable
Yeah,
retrospective.
maybe it should be a day.
maybe it should be at least a day. Because
I do wonder, myself, because I can see, where some of that stuff is going. You know, because you do want people to say. I mean, they don't speak to everything. They won't tell you everything.
yes,
And they have to be in an environment where they feel like they can communicate those things. And then until you get to that point, I think there's going to be too much.
yeah,
I think, you know,
Hard
this
work,
sounds
yeah.
like also a bit of a celebration of the end of the project. So, you know,
Okay.
Yeah,
why
yeah.
not take a whole day or 2 days or
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
you can spare,
Mhm.
you know?
And get people out of the
And
office.
exactly, get them away from their desks and thinking about what they've done and you know, sort of wrapping the project up.
yeah,
I
I
yeah.
think it would be a really powerful way to build the company.
Petey thinks a day is still too long.
Okay. Yes, and it might be for some people, but again, that's something that's addressed at the very start of that project retrospective
Yeah, I
as
think
well.
that's a really great way of dealing with
Yeah,
that.
and I think 3 days would be an impossible sell for us. For example, if we're
Yeah.
asked to go and do a project retrospective.
For any organisation, I mean, for our organisation,
Yes.
and for someone we're doing it for, I think it would be very, very hard.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But after reading that, it does make me feel that half day is just too short for a really thorough project retrospective, because you want to show the team that give them the respect that they deserve,
Yeah.
and give them enough time to get their ideas out. And for us,
That's
we
about-
do what a 1.5 hour retrospective for 2 week sprints sometimes,
Yeah,
and we barely get that. That's barely enough time, right?
that's right. That's right.
So
And
if you think,
and I ran a retrospective yesterday with a team. It was a 2-hour retrospective.
yes,
Just talking about their team in general, and that was hard work getting that done in time. Because obviously,
It's quite a broad subject, isn't
it's
it?
quite a broad subject, yeah.
Yeah.
But I used the future retrospective in that instance, which is kind of like similar. It's a similar pattern. So you're asking the team to go forward 6 months in time. Imagine they just come out of their most productive and fun sprint ever. What were the things that they were doing? You know, converse with your future selves and find out what some of the things that they were doing
yeah,
were. You know, and get them. So and that's how you start the retrospective.
and that brought out
I like
good
that.
conversations.
Oh, great conversations. Yeah.
Yeah.
It really gets people out of the box when they can imagine themselves in 6 months' time.
I think it's a great time to do it for that particular team as well, because
Yeah.
they've just been through agile training, and
That's right.
you know, they've got some ideas that would spur on that conversation.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that they're a great team because they've got a Scrum board up about their agile conversion and things they have to do
Wow,
to be successful.
that's really motivated.
Yeah, so
you know, they really want to do
they're-
this.
That's right. They're looking at what would make them successful as a Scrum team or as a group of Scrum teams, and so it's great. They're really motivated, and the conversations we had yesterday were all entirely positive and
Yeah, it'd be
some
good
great
to
objectives.
work with them to make a case study about their agile journey. Actually,
yeah.
it's really interesting.
Yep. And Ruka's doing this, which I think is...
Yeah, I think she wants to go back to her desk. That's right.
So I guess we'll wrap up for this week. There's a few topics that we didn't get to. We'll probably
save
bring
them
them
for
over
next
to
time.
the
Yeah.
next episode of the
We'll
board.
probably reprioritise them and see if they're the top of the product backlog next time.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
something
right.
like that.
If they're not, then we'll talk about something else
Yeah.
entirely
Yeah.
different.
Absolutely. So thanks for everybody who... the
Yeah,
two
the
people
couple
who
of people
watched.
who joined us. Thanks
And
a lot.
we will, of course, be uploading this to YouTube.
Yeah, we are
well.
running a little bit behind on uploading previous episodes. We've got a little bit of a backlog of that, but we're going to get onto it very shortly.
Great, okay. So yeah, thank you. See you next time.
Thank you.
See you.